So I'd like to welcome to the Anima-saurus desk for the first time, Kim Allen. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's actually really nice to be here. I've never done one of these before, so it's going to be it's going to be pretty exciting actually to see how it comes out. So thank you very much for inviting me on to be the first guest. Let's see how we go. Good to have you here. Well, I guess to start off with, why don't you just fill us in a bit about how you ended up getting into, like, where'd you come from and how you ended up in the animation industry? Well, my story starts back in the Clare Valley, South Australia. I'm now been in the industry for 14 odd years, but grew up on a little farm in the Clare Valley, South Australia, 100 k's north of Adelaide, near a little town that was just really well known for its wines. Grew up on a cereal farm. Grew up with cows, sheep. We grew crops. Our closest neighbour was like a kilometre away. Quite a good little life, I guess. Had a motorbike, had dogs, had cats, had chickens. We had the odd sheep because, we had sheep there as well, lambs. It was just country life. So, yeah, grew up in a country life. Studied till year 12, then I guess I went on an adventure then after that. I tell you what, how about you just skip the adventure stuff and just go to animation? Oh, you want me just to skip the adventures? Okay, let's go on. Let me skip through to when I was 28 then. Well, I guess I kind of ended up in Brisbane. I was just working away. It was like, what was it? Would have been, I was 28, so, there was, I guess about 10, 12 years of adventuring, just going up and down the east coast of Australia and around South Australia, and I'd done a lot of different jobs. But one of the jobs I was in, I was driving trucks, little truck, just cruising around Brisbane quite a lot. On the back of the bus, one day I saw an ad saying, you could study animation, and I'm like, study animation. I didn't even know there was something that you could do was study animation, but I saw this ad on the back of the bus a couple of times. I think on the third time I'm like, shit, I got to find out what this is all about, what this study animation is. I guess basically because, while I was growing up as a kid, my escape, beyond going out riding motorbikes or, helping on the farm, my escape was cartoons. I loved cartoons. So, thinking that, maybe I could learn something about cartoons, I thought that was great. I was kind of at that point I really hadn't done that much with computers at all. We studied computing in school, which, at that point, wasn't much more than code something to go 2 pixels this way, 2 pixels this way, and it went round in a square. That was old DOS systems, but really, I'd done an intro to Microsoft Word, so I didn't know computers at all, and I thought, well, animation. I thought about traditional animation. I was only ever an average art student, but I thought, if I could learn something about computer animation, I thought that'd be quite exciting. I thought I was ready to kind of I was making a choice about my career. So I'm like, okay, well, I want to take a choice and actually study animation. So I took on a 2-year bachelor in multimedia with a major in animation. So how'd you get, everyone always wants to know, how you got your first gig. So how'd you go getting your first gig? So I guess from there, getting started. So once I'd done the course, once I'd finished the course, I didn't get a job. It was just before that. It was just when I was getting through that. It was the global financial crisis, and all of a sudden, most of the game studios in Brisbane, because that's where I studied, was Brisbane. Most of the game studios were not looking for artists anymore. I wanted to be an animator. I'd studied to be an animator, so I could animate quite well. I had, typical course. Got exposed to everything, so I could model, I could texture, but I gravitated towards animation because when I got into the course, that's what I wanted to study, was animation. But as I got out, there was not really nothing in Brisbane. The thing that got me The thing that I didn't do though was quit. I focused on, at that point it was a 10-second club. So I started doing 10-second club challenges. So I was still working full-time, working part-time through my studies, I picked up my job. My boss was really nice. He said, all right, look, you know, if you need to come back, come back. So I went back to what I was doing. So working 8 hours through the day, but I'd come home at night and I'd be working on the 10-second club challenges. I think I slowly got better and better, and by the time, at one point, while I was doing that, there was a big production happening down on the Gold Coast. The biggest one in Australia by that point, it was Animalia, animated TV series. So I applied for that, and I applied to get in that. And of course, I didn't get in, but I was encouraged to keep trying. So, you know, I wasn't exactly a spring chicken anymore, so it's not like it was something that I wasn't going to do. So I kept trying. I kept honing my skills on the 10-second club. Eventually came in third on one of those competitions, which is my my grandest achievement. Third, because that's back at that point in time. You know, it wasn't ran by Animation Mentor or anything yet, so it was still kind of in its infancy, and sometimes you got lots of people in it, and then sometimes you only got half a dozen people in it. Anyway, whatever reason, once I got third, and that was pretty cool for me. But at that point, after that, I got in contact with it was Photon VFX down there at that point running Animalia. They got in contact with me and said, "Oh look, we're looking for some people just to cover Christmas, you know, so that our long-term permanent staff can have a bit of a break. You interested in just having a short-term contract just over the Christmas break?" I'm like, "Okay, cool. Well, that's my in." So that was where I started, was down on the Gold Coast. You know, from there, my career then didn't take off. You know, that had taken me like 9 months after I graduated before I got my first in. I'd done some free stuff before then. Tried doing a music video for a group, for some people, but that was just way over scoped and we never got finished. But yeah, so Animalia was my first in on the Gold Coast as an animator. After, it was, like I said, it was only the Christmas break. It was only like 4-month contract. But after that, they're like, "Oh, you know what? I met a few really cool people," and they said, "You know, you want to come across to New Zealand?" Photon were starting up a studio over there for an animated series called The Adventures of Vupa the Goulash. They said, "Oh, do you want to go over there as an animator?" I'm like, "Yes, love to." So off I go, across to New Zealand, go to Auckland. You know, it was Auckland. Everyone knows Weta. You know, Weta's down in Wellington, but Auckland up the top, you know, there was some work happening up there. There always has been. Auckland's actually a really cool spot for creativity. So yeah, went across there for, I was just on a year, animating on The Adventures of Vupa the Goulash. Was a really cool crew which I was with over there. But then, you know, at the end of that contract, I ended up coming back to Brisbane. And again, I went back to my old job. They just kind of said, "Oh yeah, you know what you're doing. You can go back into what I was doing." So back there without another animation job again. But at that point, I also, you know, I met a really good friend at that point, and he just kind of said, "Oh look, we're going to be starting up a studio in Brisbane. Do you want to be a part of it?" I'm like, "Yeah, sounds good. Let's do it." So while I was still doing old stuff, old work again, you know, still not full-time in the animation world, I got in with a small company called Fifth World, and we started doing phone games, like little games. So that was just the time after Half Brick had made it big with Fruit Ninja. So we were basically in the same we're in the same building as what Half Brick were, and we were making little phone games, as well as we done some educational animations for the China's market. We did some PC games as well, but just for all sorts of reasons, it ended up that the studio didn't continue. There was a few factors that went into that, but during that point, I wasn't just the animator. I ended up kind of raking the team, putting the team together, or not putting the team together, but managing the team, making sure that tasks were all done, and making sure that everyone knew what they were doing. And it was more a studio manager role than an actual animator role. And that was, man, we had a really good team in that, and that was a lot of fun. But again, that was just after that. At the end of that, I'm kind of back out without a contract again. And around that time, I was kind of like, well, I'd only just I just got married around then as well. And so, all of a sudden, I was like, what am I going to be doing now? Where's my, am I going to stick with this career path of animating? Because it doesn't feel like it's going to happen in Brisbane. And just, again, it was really, really cool. I'm really thankful for some of the people that I'd met. They were just like, oh, do you want to come down to Sydney? We've got some work down in Sydney we can be working on. I'm like, oh, Sydney? That's a big city compared to my little town I started in. I mean, I was scared of moving into Brisbane. Brisbane was a big city compared to the tiny little town I'd lived in. But I took the plunge. I said, yep, all right. I talked to my wife. I said, I'm going to chase this down. She goes, all right, I support you. Off you go then. So I went down to Sydney for a bit, working down there. And it wasn't long after that my wife moved down there with me as well. So we were both down in Sydney. And, I started off with one company, and we kind of didn't, got a few productions under the belt with that one company, contract rolled into another contract, but it got to a point again where, really I came up short again. It's just like, okay, well, it's, as an artist again, I'm like, well, I'm out of contract. And I ended up picking up a teaching role at a private college. Now that was really cool at that point. For me, it was really good. Actually teaching rather than just honing my skills. I got to go back and be, again, I was the studio manager of my classroom. So I had a little team of minions in front of me who, were being students, which were great. So I had to actually refine my skill. I was building up a skill set at that point where I was really working hard at communication, because up till then, communication's probably the skill that needs the most work. I'm not the most efficient communicator. While I was animating, I was learning the skills of, how to best communicate with body language, because you've got to be effective with body language, and it's all about communicating through posture and through posing and through the expressions of people, which was really great. I was really good at it. I was really fast at it. Well, I thought I was anyway. But I just hadn't landed any big contract. So I'd gone into teaching. I ended up spending 4 years teaching, which was good. I got to do a lot of the clerical work behind it. So all the documentation, and learn about the standards, and learn about what sort of things private colleges actually have to deal with for accreditation. I come out of the other end of it. When after 4 years, I'd really kind of, I'd had a gut full of it by then. I was very blessed for it, because that was the time that my son was born, and I had a steady income, because it was the first full-time job I'd had in the industry. It's a complete different industry, but it's sort of on the fringes of the industry, and I learned a lot during that time, because I was working with a team down there that had a lot of different skills compared to what I had, because I came in as the animation specialist, even though that was the word, that was the term I got given, which was quite funny for me. I'm like, oh, well, I've only done, half a dozen little projects, and they ended up, I had worked on AAA titles and that, and I'm like, oh, actually, come to think of it, I could animate. But yeah, I'd come into AIE as the animation specialist, and I was working with guys who knew film as well, because that was the module, or the class we were teaching was not just 3D, was film and special effects as well. So I got to learn a lot on that part. I met some great people there. I got some really good friends out of the time I was there. But one of the guys that had a huge impact on my time there kind of changed my focus. So I guess just for everyone here, just expand a bit. Why did you go into, you got into animation as an animator to start off with. So why the change of focus then from animating to then Previs? What sort of brought that on? Actually, that's a really good question. What sort of happened was with my time at AIE, where I was at the time, I was working with someone who really knew their stuff with special effects, and they'd done a lot of camera work before. A guy by the name of Alan Maxwell, and he inspired me to actually be looking more at cameras and what we could do with cameras, because at that point, I'd done a lot of animating, and I hadn't really, I never felt like I really got my claws into it. You know what I mean? You got your claws into it to get started. I never really got that far. So when, after spending some time with Alan, I got inspired to start looking more at storytelling through the lens of a camera. And that was basically my starting point. Like when I started getting tired of teaching, I got into looking at cameras, and that's when I applied for Previs work. And I really got into, with teaching, one of the things I always wanted to do for my students when we were teaching was to get professionals, like people who are actually in the industry and for them to talk about what they were doing and how they got there. Most of the time we ended up with, I got to know a lot of the recruiters around the industry as well down in Sydney while I was there, which I'd never been exposed to before. So at the end of 4 years, I kind of had built up those relationships, which was, something which I just don't undervalue anymore. The relationships you got to have within this industry is huge. And you really got to work at making sure that you value those relationships. But yeah, but at the end of that, I kind of landed my first role in Previs. With my background in animation, I could do real clear posing, and I was very fast at posing and being able to move characters around. But I really gravitated towards the art of storytelling through a camera and working closely with the director to get his ideas, the thoughts which he had about what the story is meant to do within scene to scene, and put them down through interpreting storyboards, because storyboards are fabulous, because they're really needed, but to interpret what he's given me and then to put that into 3D so that we can then iterate and come up with the story that he wants in 3D before we pass it off to the animators, who spend the time to make the characters move fantastically. I have since, I've now got a real appreciation for animators. But anyway, that landed me my first role down in Sydney as a Previs artist. And for whatever reason, whether it's just the world, the economy or whatever, I was able to roll from contract to contract down there quite easily. So I've got quite a few different films under my belt now, which makes it feel worthwhile that I took that dive, because I've now gone not from just animation, I've gone to special effects as well. So I've done feature hybrid special effects stuff, and I've been able to be in and work with green screen, blue screen, setting up monster movies, setting up fun kids movies, and And that's also led me into, from Sydney, I've done, bounced between a couple of the big studios down in Sydney, as well as a smaller studio which came in to do a feature film that was shot down there, Pacific Rim Uprising. I got to work on that. Then back on, the Lego movies, Lego Batman, Lego Ninjago. I got to... My favourite one was I did get to work at Flying Bark, which when I studied... the first time I studied, they had an open studio down there, and I flew from Brisbane down to Sydney to go see the studio, and that was while I was doing my 10-second clubs, and they basically said, look, you need to keep working at this. So, it is now 8 years later, and I'm like, yes, I finally got to work at Flying Bark. So that was great. But then I also gone across to Auckland again to start on a complete green studio. So now that I've, worked in the pipeline, I can understand pipeline and I can help setting up pipelines to work in is really cool. I love doing that. So I've done that over in Auckland, and then also up here in Brisbane, I've also set up or helped set up the animation and the Previs pipeline for feature films up here as well. So that's kind of been my arc now. I've touched, series, I've touched games, I've touched AAA games, I've touched feature movies, both as animation and special effects. So that's been my journey into this world of animation. Well, from the sounds of it, you've definitely not been in the same location for very long. So, I guess a lot of people kind of have, a lot of industries don't have such a mobile work life. Tell me a bit more. How do you go with such a mobile work life? Well, it's kind of hard. Tell you what, the mobile lifestyle, I thought, I wasn't really, when I first studied it, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think there was, I didn't think I was a person to be able to do the mobile lifestyle. But now I've kind of, I've jumped from city to city a few times. It's all right when I was by myself. But with my wife, she's incredibly supportive. I totally love that, she's totally... I really love and support her supporting me, because without her I wouldn't be able to do what I do. But now with our son getting a bit older as well, it's become harder. It's really hard now. I guess the industry as a whole, there's only so many permanent roles in any one studio. And, in Australia, the animation industry is not that huge. So the mobile lifestyle, is something which you've just got to kind of work with if you want to stay within the industry. Yeah, your work-life balance then is actually really tough. Like the last time I went across to New Zealand, my son was only 3 at that point. That was 9 months away from my wife and Miles, my wife and son. They came over and visited for a week, and I came back and visited a week. But when you look at it that way, we were in different countries. It's really hard. But at the same time, the opportunity I got to start with, that's what we talked about. We talked about it. We weighed it up. And again, thanks to my wife, she kind of really put it in perspective. She goes, well, how many opportunities are you going to have to start up a new studio from scratch and bring something into life and work with a complete green IP with, people who have faith in you that you're going to be able to bring something to fruition. And, it was an amazing experience. I got to work with some amazing talent over there. And I'm kind of hoping that I get to work with them again in the future too. Again, it comes down to the relationships you build. And I really appreciate, Toy Box over in New Zealand, that they had the faith in me to kind of get their project, Sherwood, up and over. And, the results of Sherwood were really exciting. It was a great client we got to work with. It's now out on streaming, so you can stream it. And, it got nominated for some awards as well, which is really nice. That sounds tough. I just didn't realise it. So, But tell me what, you know, is there anyone that, since anyone who's got all the way through this, is there anything you'd like to, you know, spruik? You got anything on the side that you're working on beyond the projects? Oh, yeah. I guess you want to help me out? Yep, I've got Palmerston Ridge is my book, which I've done, which is for sale. Definitely check that out. Well, I guess just with that, you know, how you got your book. And tell me a bit more about Anima-saurus. You know, why are you bringing this Anima-saurus thing to life? Oh, so why Anima-saurus? Well, I guess now, you know, I'm not exactly a spring chicken anymore. I don't know if I want to say that. Well, Anima-saurus to me has been basically a development of what I'm kind of doing, what I'm looking at giving back to my industry that's given me so much now is I've looked at like the broad scope of what's available for everybody to, you know, receive information from. And I've noticed that there's always a lot of stuff for people who are just starting out. So there's always a lot of feedback and, you know, loops and stuff like that. But the actual business of animation and something for like artists like me to collaborate on, you know, because I've been around the industry a long time now, I kind of see that Animasauras is a way or is a community to be able to talk about things other than just starting off. You know, like the business, like the studios and what direction the studio's going and what sort of platforms are going to be taking off and where to find, you know, great short films and who to kind of look at to make great short films or what features are coming up and to talk about things about the industry as a whole and in a general space, as well as, you know, because I love breaking down animation, but there's so many brilliant animators that do that already. But from a filmic perspective, and from a layout Previs perspective, or from a production perspective, I don't think there's that many places, you know, that actually focus on that area of animation. So that's Anima-saurus for me, is catering for an audience that's a little bit older and a bit more focused on that. To give them resources that you know we can talk about and we can discuss. Okay, and well, thank you very much for coming on. I guess everyone just go check out the book, check out Anima-saurus, check out the resources we're slowly starting to build. Good luck with that. I hope that it, you know, brings you a big success. And until the next time, we're actually here, hopefully getting some more conversation going. Share us around. Make sure you say hi to everybody. That's so ridiculous. All right, so thank you very much.